Hi, I'm Kim Schmidt, and in this video I'm going to show you how to properly configure an Amazon EC2 virtual machine. This is an architectural diagram of what we will set up. We will launch an EC2 instance in an AMI, an Amazon machine image, that has elastic block storage. We will protect these AWS services with a virtual private cloud with an internet gateway to log in from home. We will configure the IAM user, the Identity and Access Management user, the role and the permissions that allow us to securely access the EC2 instance from a terminal window using SSH. So let's learn how. Here we are at the AWS console. Let's click on EC2. In the dashboard view here, you can see all of the resources that you have running or configured for an EC2 instance. Let's go ahead and launch an instance. The first thing that they ask you to do is to choose an AMI, an Amazon machine image, which is basically the hardware that you're going to provision for your instance. It consists of an operating system, an application server, and sometimes even applications like SQL Server Express here. We're going to choose the Amazon Linux AMI, so you click Select. The next thing you do is you choose an instance type. There are two types of instance storage, EBS and an instance store. EBS is a persistent store, and if you stop your EC2 instance, it saves the data because your storage device acts like your hard drive. So if you stop your instance, you will retain your data versus an instance store, which will delete the data when you stop your instance. An EBS volume is created from an EBS snapshot. The boot time is less than about a minute, and the size limit is 16 terabytes. Conversely, an instance store is launched from a template that's stored in an S3 storage bucket. The boot time is less than 5 minutes, and the size limit is 10 gigs. So there's quite a bit of difference. You'll notice the instance types are in families. So there's general purpose, there's compute optimized, GPU optimized, memory optimized, and storage optimized. And you can imagine for certain scenarios, you would want to have a certain family of instance types. For example, you might want it GPU optimized for video games, for example. We're going to choose the T2 Micro, which is free tier eligible, which is always nice. And then we're going to configure the instance details. You can launch it in an auto-scaling group where you can set up policies to auto-scale the number of instances in the group and also get rid of unhealthy instances, but we're going to leave it at 1. Going through the spot in reserved instances beyond the scope of this presentation. We're going to launch this in a VPC, a virtual private cloud, which is an isolated part of AWS, where you're given an IP address range and you create subnets and you configure route tables, things that you would do on-prem or in your data center. I have one already configured, but let's just look at what you would do if you didn't. You would create a VPC, you would give it a name tag, let's just call this Charlie, because I'm not very creative today, and the CIDR block has to be within this range. So let's just say 10.0.0.0 WAC 16, and we'll leave it at default Tennessee and create. So now we have a VPC called Charlie. Going back to our EC2 management console, if I were to refresh this, we have Charlie to choose from, but I'm going to leave it at this. And with the subnets, because I chose this, I'm just going to show you this Charlie. Then I would have to create a new subnet. So let's just go through that so you know how to do it. Creating a new subnet, you would give it a name tag. Let's call this Charlie also. And see, associating it with the Charlie VPC, we're going to give it the CIDR block, same CIDR block, and create. Simple as that. And going back here, if I were to refresh this, it would use Charlie. But I'm going to, again, just use the one that I've created. I'm kind of partial to that. If you enable a public IP, then you you can access your EC2 instance from a terminal. The IAM role associated with this restricts users that can access this EC2 instance. I'm going to choose one, but I'm going to walk you through what this means. This is the role that I am going to use. The permissions that I have include administrator access, which means I can do anything, but you attach different policies here. So now that we saw the role, let's take a look at the user. You have to have an access key in order to log in with the AWS CLI. So what I'm going to do is delete one because you can only have two at a time, and I'm going to show you how you make one. Create an access key and show the credentials, and you only get to see this once. So you're going to want to copy and paste it and download the credentials. And you're going to want to paste this into something like text edit and save it. Going back to the EC2 console now, we have everything configured right. The AMI, by the way, is not restricted to this region. Now it's launching, but Amazon has these great warnings that if you forgot a step and you didn't go through 1 through 7 up here, they remind you, which is wonderful. So let's edit the security groups like they say. It's saying that this port 0.0.0.0 WAC 0 is open to the public. So let's restrict it to my IP, call it something significant, my home, and review and launch. Now it's asking for a key pair because it's secured with a public and private key pair, and we're going to call this, well, let's call it Charlie to be consistent. And then you download the key pair, and you notice it's a PEM file. Now while it's launching, you can click on the instance ID and watch it provision, and now you can see it's initializing. You could review here all of the different things about the instance, the EC2 instance, but what you really want to notice is this public DNS, because that's how we're going to interact with our EC2 instance. While that's finishing, we can look at connect. So you would open a terminal window or an SSH client or the AWS CLI, and on Windows you can use PuTTY to convert that .pem file, the charlie.pem, into a .ppk file, which is required.
It's 10 o'clock.
And we're logged in to EC2. So from here you can do anything with your AWS resource with the EC2 instance you have running. And let me just show you this. You can just write AWS EC2 help, and it gives you all of the different things that you can do.